Welcome to Music Breakdown, a series where we take one piece of music and really try and deconstruct it and work out exactly how the composer was able to express the emotions and feelings that we experience in game. So here we're exploring feeling, theory and production. And we're better to start with one of my favourite pieces from Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair, Ikoroshia by Masafumi Takada. Not only is it my favourite investigation theme of all of them in Danganronpa, but also motivated and inspired one of my most popular arrangements on the channel, A Smooth Investigation, Ikoroshia. You might also recall that I did a similar video on the investigation themes more generally, which you can check out in the description below. But first, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and make sure to hit the bell icon so you know when the next analysis video comes out. And also, it would be greatly appreciated if you could consider supporting me via Patreon, as it really does help to make more videos like this. And finally, as many of you will know, I've been offered a massive opportunity to study at the legendary Abbey Road, but I need your help to get there, so please see the link in the description for more details. But before we start analysing the music, I think it's important to provide some context, because the context helps us to determine how exactly the music was constructed and why it was constructed in that way. So for Danganronpa 2, the setting is Jabberwock Island, a paradise-like island where we're exploring beautiful settings, beautiful characters, and we immediately develop a love-hate relationship with certain characters as well. And as we develop these attachments to certain characters, inevitably a murder is going to take place. And for the purpose of Danganronpa 2, the investigation theme, our theme that we hear when we're exploring who exactly committed this crime and how they committed this crime, is Ikoroshia, a piece which I can only describe as funky, jazzy, rock influenced, but also very chaotic. It creates feelings of insanity and it's one of the things I love most about the piece. But before we start going into the musical detail, let's do a summary of the entire piece. The key signature, or root key, is G minor, and it modulates to A minor in a particular section of the piece. The time signature is a consistent 4/4, meaning that there are 4 quarter notes or crotchet beats in a bar. The tempo, or BPM, is a consistent 128 beats per minute, approximately. And the main instruments used are synthesizers, organs, drum kits, trumpets, and an electric piano. I've described the mood as intense, chaotic. It creates this feeling of insanity, which I think makes sense given the nature of the characters in the game. It's no surprise that I think personally that the characters in Danganronpa 2 are the most unique, most original, and also the most insane to some extent too. So we currently have the context of the piece and a brief summary of the key musical components across the entire piece. Now is the question of, how was Masafumi Takada able to use those elements to construct a chaotic, insanely brilliant piece of music? And in order to do that, let's start by talking about structure. So because the piece is slightly unorthodox in terms of how it's structured, I'm going to be using letters and numbers to define how the structure works, rather than saying verse and chorus, because things are less clear in Ikoroshia. To start with, we have section A1, or just the introduction, where it begins with atonal synths and what I would call a noisescape in the background. The lead synthesizer helps to establish the key of G minor. The effect of this introduction is that it helps to establish this level of intensity with the fizziness of the synthesizers. Next is section B1, where the rhythm and the bass is introduced. We get to hear the organ, the drums, and the bass for the first time. Section C1 is where the trumpet is introduced and we're given an insight into the main melody. And this idea of jazziness starts to become apparent here. Next is section D1, where the intense fizzy sounding synthesizers occur again and we start to have this dramatic build-up. And that build-up leads to section C2, where we have a key change. I call it C2 because it's essentially very similar to C1, where we have the trumpet melody, but the biggest difference here is that the entire key signature of the piece is now changed, from G minor to A minor. This continues to section E, which is a bit more of an outro, although it continues in the key of A minor. Next is section A2, where we go back to the original key of G minor, and it's a very similar style to the introduction. We have those noiseescapes again, and the initial melody comes back. However, this time, the drums are introduced, which is why I say it's a slight amendment from the original section A1. And finally, we go into section B1 again, which is where the entire piece loops. So I'd describe the overall structure as a bit of an organised mess. It's chaotic and sounds unpredictable at times, but that's exactly the point. It enables the feelings of tension and insanity that we experience when we're playing the game, and it makes sense because these aren't ordinary characters committing ordinary murders. These are characters with unique talents who are trying to escape an island, trying to return to normality, and in order to do so, they have to make their crimes insane and unpredictable. And tension is the key word here, because musically, Masafumi Takada has used a number of devices in order to establish tension. And I would put them under 3 different categories. The first is the use of instrumentation, and in particular, synthesizers, drum patterns, and the trumpet. The second is the melody and the melodic lines, and in particular, chromaticism, which is where notes are used which are outside of the key signature, which often create this big contrast between something which sounds normal and something which sounds a bit irregular and somewhat out of order. And the third is the use of harmony. In terms of instrumentation, let's first talk about the synthesizers. I'd say that adds the real meat and core as to why this piece sounds so tense and chaotic. It's these fizzy sounding synthesizers and these dramatic noiseescapes that happen in the background, and that's most evident in the introduction. The introduction has this bright and fizzy sounding synth playing the melody. Now let's quickly try and recreate this. So I've opened up a basic synthesizer plugin, and what I'm going to do is only make very slight and small changes. So I'm going to pick a sawtooth wave to start with. And the only real thing I'm going to change are the decay and release parameters of the synthesizer. Decay just meaning how fast the sound decreases in volume, and release being how long the sound lingers on after I finish pressing the note. You can already see how big of a difference this has made and sounds much closer to the original. The final change I'd make is just to add some delay to the sound in order to give it that presence in the stereo field, just like the original sound. The presence of the trumpet alone in Ikoroshia is the thing that creates this jazzy vibe. The trumpet is playing these beautifully embellished melodic lines, and the use of stereo effects such as reverb and echo give the trumpet this bright detective style vibe to it as well. The drums aren't afraid of being upfront. They aren't afraid of being fast-tempoed, chaotic, fast, and filled with drum fills. And so ultimately, while all 3 of these elements, the synths, the trumpet, and the drum patterns, aren't chaotic in and of themselves, but combine them all together and you have a chaotic, intense, but well-suited investigation theme. The next element Takada uses to create tension is chromaticism within the melody. As I mentioned before, this piece is based on G minor, a series of notes from G to G 1 octave above. And on occasion, Takada uses notes which go outside of this key signature. Ordinarily, this creates a level of contrast, a feeling that these notes shouldn't be there, it sounds a bit strange, but used so carefully like is done in Ikoroshia, creates both a tense feeling and also a feeling that this actually works and sounds quite groovy. Let's take a look at 4 examples of chromatic notes in Ikoroshia. I'll show you what it sounds like originally, and what it would sound like if it weren't chromatic. And hopefully you'll notice that the non-chromatic versions sound much more normal, and therefore less intense and less chaotic, which doesn't work for a piece like this. And finally, the harmony has a significant part to play in why the piece sounds so chaotic and intense, but why it works so well. Ordinarily, a bass line should follow the key signature. It should ground the entire piece. The melodic line can do whatever it wants on occasion, but the harmony should stay grounded. But the bass line here doesn't do that. It likes to be a bit funky at times, and it likes to introduce the chromaticism just like the melody. Similarly, the chords being played by the organ also add this level of chromaticism again, modulating between G minor and G sharp minor. And both of these combined create something which is contrasting, something which shouldn't ordinarily work, but in this case, it works perfectly. So all of these elements combined create what is an insane sounding investigation theme. One of my favourites, and it's the type of piece where I just pause the game at times and stop playing and just take a listen to the music and really appreciate everything that the composer tried to do. And I hope throughout this video, the feelings and the musical tools used to express these emotions made sense to both musicians and also people who are just interested in the music. If you want to see me cover any other pieces, do musical breakdowns of anything else, let me know in the comment section below. Also, a quick reminder, please make sure to subscribe, and also any support through the Patreon would be massively appreciated too, as it enables me to keep creating these types of videos. Until the next one, thanks a lot for watching. Take care.